Okay, I thought I would just put together this video to sort of document my own personal experience with spiritual awakening. Now, if you'd asked me a couple of years ago what I thought of this spiritual awakening stuff that increasing numbers of people are talking about, I would have probably said, oh, it's a load of just wishy-washy, airy-fairy, woo-woo nonsense. And that kind of thinking is probably the biggest obstacle to actually start to let that process unfold. That, for me, I feel like I've been holding this process back for a while, unconsciously, with that sort of thinking. But for about the past year now, it's really taken hold, should we say? And it seems to be driving itself now. It's like the genie's out of the bottle and there doesn't seem to be any going back. Not that I would want to now anyway. But in this video I'm just going to go over around about 20 of the, I don't want to say symptoms because it makes it sound like what I'm going through is some sort of psychological illness, but sort of 20 effects of this apparent spiritual awakening process that I'm now going through, and I've been going through for about the past year. So the overall picture of what's going on, so the overall picture, the overall shift could probably be described as increased awareness and sensitivities to all sorts of things. I'll go into that in a minute. Increasing loss of external attachments. So I'm not as attached to things. I'm not so attached to places, objects, feelings, basically anything in the external, as well as some internal things. And there's also an overriding sense of boundary dissolution. So things that used to appear as completely separate in my mind are now interlinked, and increasingly so. I'll begin with the most dramatic sign of all. These are acute awakening experiences. That's my term for them. I know that some people call spiritual awakening, that's their term for one of these peak experiences, but I am calling the whole process the spiritual awakening, and these peak experiences, I'm calling them acute awakening experiences. Now, to me, they've been characterized by extreme awareness of what's going on in the external world, and most of them have occurred to me while I've been outside, just walking down the street. So suddenly you'll feel this influx of joy and appreciation and absolute awe and wonder at what you are witnessing. I mean, just take a step back and just try to remember, oh my word, look at what I'm actually witnessing. Look at what I am. How did this happen? That sort of question can begin to get you into that state. But I would characterize this state as you get this profound inner joy. I'll talk more about that later. You feel that you are connected to everything. So you're looking at this building and you're feeling this, that you are somehow part of it and it is somehow part of you. And the most mundane of objects just appear fantastic to you. A piece of rubbish blowing, the reflections of a tin can, moss growing on a wall, spiderwebs over a light, and cracks in the pavement, just all blow your mind in this state. And everyone you're walking past, all the shops you're seeing, it's just magnificent. It's absolutely magnificent. Now, these experiences don't last very long. They haven't, at least for me. Your mileage may vary, but for me, they kind of lasted about anything from between 10 minutes to 30 minutes. Sometimes there's like the sudden surge of a peak, and then over the next few hours or days there's like an afterglow experience too. It's been a while since I've had one of those peak experiences, but I'm not chasing those. They come when they come. But I'm grateful for the half dozen of them or so that I've had, and they've really expanded my perception, my mind, and so on. So that's the acute awakening experiences. Now, what's also emerging for me is this, I like to call it holistic systems thinking and grand narrative thinking. So you're seeing patterns on the smallest level as well as the largest level. So, for instance, you as a person to this planet's like a cell of your body is to you. So you're seeing the same sort of systems working on all levels. If you look at a map of the UK and the major streets and roads and the patterns that they seem to form, and then, for instance, you look at a picture of the back of your eye and all of the blood vessels, there's a striking similarity. But then when you think about it, it's like they're kind of performing the same function: efficient transport of goods and of energy and things from one place to another. The distinction between what's living and conscious and not breaks down. You can see the evolution of a city as a living being, like if you were to look at a time lapse of a piece of what are they called, lichen or something, growing over time, there would be some similarity. The concrete jungle is closer to an actual jungle than it was before, when the distinction between artificial and nature was more strong. So all these boundaries begin to dissolve. There's a lot I could say about that. I am planning on going more in depth into each one of these in separate videos at some point, but there isn't any sort of schedule to that. There isn't any, oh, I'm going to do one each week. This is very much, if I feel in the moment, then I'll elaborate on whichever one of these I feel like doing. The next one is a massive one for me. Musical appreciation. This is a big one. So not only am I appreciating the depth of music, the instrumentation, but I'm also increasingly connecting with the emotional depth and the content of lyrics. I never used to be a big one for this. Somehow, I don't understand it. But certain artists that I used to like, but I didn't get, now I feel I get. So a big one for me right now is Howard Jones. I used to love listening to his music a while back, but it's only recently that a couple of his albums in particular, Dream Into Action and Humans Lib, are pretty much all about this spiritual awakening experiences and loss of attachments and so on. And that's blowing my mind, because in this previous state I was unaware of really what he was talking about, and I didn't even connect with it really. But now it's like all of the dots have joined, and it's wow. And as well as this, my musical tastes are shifting too. So classical music is becoming massive now for me, and it's just becoming more beautiful every single month. It's just, I've only just literally got started with that, but that's a massive one. So yeah, music in all ways is, the depth of it's increasing, the complexity is becoming more apparent, the layering and instrumentation, even in pop music. It doesn't matter what it is. Like, I seem to be able to appreciate it more. The next shift I've noticed, and it seems to be more apparent after meditating, is tactile sensitivity. So the feeling of typing on a mechanical keyboard is way nicer. When I pick up a book to read it, I'm now more aware of the pages, the feel of the page, the smell of the book. I mean, I always like book smells anyway. That is a common thing. That isn't actually that weird. But the feeling of the page and so on, and the quality of the paper, that's a complete new one for me, really. So it's not just about what I'm reading, it's about that whole reading experience. It's connecting everything into a cohesive experience, rather than just, I'm this person just doing this for this next thing. And I'll come more onto the present moment stuff in a bit. Continuing with the theme of sensitivity, bodily sensitivity is way up. If I eat something and like really sugary or fatty, I really feel it now. It's like my body and my mind and my consciousness are more connected, and I'm making changes with my diet purely based on this, with dramatic effect. So for a long time I've suspected that I have some sort of an intolerance to sugar, so I eat like 3 or 4 chocolate biscuits and I've got this horrible brain fog and so on and so forth. But I was never able to really sort of put that to one side until recently, when, because of this increased sensitivity and because my consciousness has been a lot higher, when I ate something like a few chocolate biscuits, oh, it was dramatic, so dramatic. So yeah, I'm starting to make changes with my diet. I'm sort of trying to eat less carbohydrates and things like that. And yeah, that's a big one. Also, again, relating to bodily sensitivity, but this is now coming more into the mind. The power of the breath to alter your state of mind is profound. You breathe in really deeply and out really deeply, just 10 times, and I will pretty much guarantee your state of mind is going to be changed. So we have this power with us all the time called breathing, and there are so many ways you can breathe consciously to reduce anxieties, to clear up tension in your body, and it's just mad. It's absolutely mad. We're all sitting on this gold mine called the conscious breath, and we're not even aware of that. So for instance, when I've been feeling rather anxious, I feel my breath is shallow, and then I just do that about 20 times, and for the next few hours or for the rest of the day, I'm in a much more composed state. So that's a big one, but a simple one. The next change I've noticed is dissolution of addictive behaviours and tendencies, and these have occurred by themselves, because it's related to the loss of attachment to external things, which I'll go on to. I am sorry that I've not ordered this very well, but this is a very spur of the moment thing, so my intention is to just get this out there in a rawest form as possible. But yes, the addictive tendencies and behaviours have just, they haven't gone completely, but big ones for me have been screen time. Recently I've now started just taking entire days off where I'm not staring at screens. That in the past would have been very difficult for me. It's still challenging, but it's related to my awareness of my mind and my body again. And I've been a pretty big coffee head for 5 years after being introduced to it at uni, and now, literally 3 days ago, I've started to switch coffee with green tea, and I'm already noticing differences. Could it be the placebo effect? Yes, but I'm at least cutting down my intake of caffeine, and that, just a couple of months ago, I would have said, caffeine, there's no way I'm going to be able to stop that. There's no way I'm going to be able to cut that out. That's, part of me was thinking that was such an integral part of my being, but it just isn't, and it's just fizzling away by itself. These addictions, without any conscious effort, it's just, there's a force inside that's driving these changes, and that leads me on to the next point of this, which is a big, massive one. This is big. It's the arising of presence and intuition. Intuition, also, I'm going to lump the phrase universal intelligence in with that. It's the underlying force that's driving life. It's the part of you that you have in common with a tree. It's who you are when this thinking mind isn't crazily thinking, but when you're still conscious. So I'm not including being asleep in that. It's that part, the underlying background consciousness that your thinking mind rests on, and in many cases obscures your vision. That, the arising of intuition, that is the force that's that little voice in your head that people so often ignore. That's your intuition, and it's so often ignored because it's being obscured by this screaming, hollering, egoic thinking mind that's saying, that's telling you what's important to you, to this constructed ego self. That's what your thinking mind's doing. Your thinking mind is an advanced survival mechanism, basically, and it's like, the thinking mind is like, if you imagine this is a bit of a scientific example now, but if you imagine the atmosphere, so you've got the weather systems. The weather systems, that's like your thinking mind. If the atmosphere is your consciousness, then the lower consciousness is these weather systems, these storms, these frenzies, and occasionally it will be calm and you can think clearly. But when the rain comes back and the storms are back and you're caught in this, you don't know up from down, left from right, and you see no clarity. But the clarity's there. You just have to go above the thinking mind, and that spaciousness, the inner spaciousness, that is the state of presence. This is a term I've borrowed from Eckhart Tolle. That it's a state of intense awareness, and it feels like it literally feels like there's more space in your brain, in your mind, in your vision, almost too. There's more space. You just feel it within. It's incredible. And from that space, you can become aware of intuition and the universal intelligence driving things. And this, to me, I get a very visual experience of this, especially when I'm in this state of presence and I decide to meditate. Very often, I experience that intuition as actual morphing colours and forms. That's my personal visual experience of that state, of this intuition. And from this intuition, from this intelligence, comes answers to problems, solutions that have eluded you for ages, and inspiration. this, what I'm doing right now, is the product of that state of mind. No thinking went into this really. This is 90% from that part of my mind, and I would not have been doing this if I wasn't able to access that. And this, I would say, some people would call it the, let me get this right, the right brain. This is analogous to the right brain. It's the, from this, a lot of creative urges come through, and I'm feeling that too. I was going to mention that later, but I'm going to merge it with this one. So this is what I experience from this state, is often an influx of creativity and expression that otherwise is just lost under this, or rather is obscured by this incessant thinking. The I shoulds, the what's worth what to me, the viewing of the world in terms of objects and things like that. That doesn't happen in this state of mind. This is a very, very powerfully intuitive place. And a number of things I've done over the last few months, including giving up coffee, going for a week-long trek in Devon, and producing the art that I've done recently, that's all from an intuitive place, and more of my life is being driven by this force. It's like this force is living through me. It's less me living life, but now life living me, and it feels a lot more. It's a lot more challenging to my thinking mind with all its fears and anxieties, but it's a lot more genuine, and it feels right. There's no denying that, and the intelligence of this part of the mind just can't be. It's just incredible. Like, I would never have thought up that walk in Devon in such a perfect way. But again, I'll talk more about that at another time. I feel like I've spoken about this for quite some time now. Another symptom is arising of inner joy and the return of childlike wonder. So this is a feeling of miraculous being. It's just being in awe of what you're witnessing, that you are here. Look at all these things. What even is this? And it's so wonderful, and it's all so colourful and deep. And the return of childlike wonder for me is very specific with nature. So it's a common trope. It's a common stereotype of childlike wonder is, you know, the whole lift up a log and look at all the insects and things crawling around. Well, I've done that recently, and that really came back to me. It's like the amount of life that's just in our back gardens is incredible, and we're just not aware of it, I feel, most of the time, because we're all caught up in our thinking, doing part of the mind that basically controls most of us, and still controls me. I'm not here saying I'm fully awakened, fully woke. There isn't any end goal to this, but it's just the beginning of a shift. This is very much the beginning of something for me, and still the majority of my time I'm caught in the incessant stream of thinking, and it's an ongoing process. It's a lifelong process that we're all on. Unconditional love. Now this one I've only experienced briefly, but it was profound enough that I've not forgotten it. So there was a couple of days where I was looking at pictures of groups of people that I spent time with, and all of the judgment was gone, and all there was this feeling of unconditional love. It didn't matter who the person was, what they did, and this extended to everyone, the most heinous evil tyrants. That feeling of universal love was present. This integrated awareness of the human spirit. That is what it is. It's the recognition of the human being before anything else, before what they've done, before how they identify, whatever. This is an experience that I'm not having very often, but I've had it a couple of times, but not for very long. But it's been profound in that it's really served to lessen my internal judgments of people, because I have had, and I think most people do have, this automatic pretty much judgment of people. This is all ingrained, learned, programmed in. Oh, that person looks a certain way, is dressing a certain way, they must be like X. Well, that judgment can only serve to backfire on you if you ever approach X. And it's once again a way of your thinking mind sort of ensuring that you survive. There has to be a bad that you're avoiding, and what it does is it latches onto other people and forms judgments in an erroneous attempt to actually protect you. But it's not protecting you, which is the background state of universal intelligence that's having this experience. All it's protecting is this egoic, programmed thinking construct. That's what it's actually defending. And once you sort of see through that, you stop. You hear that your thinking mind's automatically judging, but there's a deeper part of you that is distant from that. You're not lost in that sea of judgment. The next big shift for me, and this is quite a big one, although it's not occurring all the time. This is a loss of attachment to worldly ideals, objects, things, looks, status. Like, if you'd asked me 6 months ago, if I sort of was a bit, my self-worth was defined by wealth, or that I'm nearly got a PhD, I would have probably said, yeah, it is really. I wouldn't want to fail my PhD. I still wouldn't want to. I still wouldn't want to lose everything I own. That's another programmed illusion, by the way, but that's a topic for another time. I wouldn't want to lose these things, but they're not as integral to my self-worth and my being, because they are all once again tied up in this egoic thinking mind. They are not actually who I am at a fundamental level. And that's the shift that's occurring. Now, the more I'm identified with that thinking mind, the more the attachments intensify. But that's going to happen, and I'm not surprised by that, and this is an ongoing process. So would I be really angry if I lost like a prized possession? Probably. I'd probably still have that reaction. But I have had recently moments of quite substantial financial loss, but the negativity just dissolved very quickly. Whereas before I would have ruminated on that sort of stuff for a while. Now not so much. And if I were to fail my PhD now, that would affect me for a while. But I feel like it's not who I am. It's not actually where my self-worth is, and it can never, in the long run, fulfill that function. The things I do are never going to increase my feeling of self-worth for very long. The things I do increasingly are actually a side effect of the self-worth that's already inbuilt and there, but just needs to be recognized in that present and intuitive state. It's all sounded really, really good so far, but there have been some issues. So spiritual apathy. This is this phenomenon where old egoic interests, things that were important to this part of me, have started to lose their depth and their shine. So there are a number of hobbies and activities and things that I do that don't have quite the, that I'm not quite as obsessed with. It relates to the addictive thing as well. But very often I've been in a state of high awareness and consciousness, but I'm quite content just sitting and being. That inclination to do is diminishing. Because all these things I was doing, not all of them, but most of the things I was doing didn't have anything to do with this new arising space. And this is a difficult one for me. So a big one for me right now is playing PC games, like big part of me. But as time's gone on, they've just drifted to the side. I'm still enjoying them, but they aren't latched onto my sense of identity like they were. But this is challenging, because without a new influx of interests to come in, you can find yourself in a state of apathy. And it's very strange being in a state of blissful apathy, when apathy is so often associated with depressive states. So that's very strange, and it's something that I'm getting used to, but it's just going to take a bit of time for these new, genuine core motivations to actually come through from that intuitive side. The next shift is more of a focus on the here and now, and much less on the past and less on the future. So it's this idea that if you're rooted in being and your energy is directed towards now, then that's the best way of ensuring a happy, prosperous, spiritual future. If you're lost in what's going to happen next, I'm doing this for this and then I'm doing that for that, you are living in an illusory thinking state. You are living in a dream world. This is a mental projection you are living in. You are spending your entire life in, and this is what I was doing for a large part of my life. It wasn't about enjoying this moment. It wasn't about being here and appreciation of what I have and who I am and my capacities and capabilities. It was, how can I get more? If I do this, then I'll do that. I should be doing this. Da, 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 da. It's all just, you know, blinkers on, like not actually being here, not appreciating this universe that we are in. And it's a thing I keep on coming back to, because it's something I keep on having to remind myself on a daily basis. The next shift for me has been an increased desire and ability to contemplate. So contemplation to me is one of the few things where a synthesis of that intuitive and thinking mind works really well. So the intuitive mind comes up with something, often something profound but simple, and the thinking mind then likes to delve into that and complicate it normally, because the thinking mind complicates everything. It divides, it just complicates everything. That's one of its functions. Whereas the intuitive mind, you get the simple solutions, the simple realizations. But the contemplation is about a harmonious, integrated balance of those two, and it's a skill that I'm rapidly building, and it's the ability to just think through things, like take a question and sort of have it in your mind for a few days and see what comes up. Now, I've been guilty of prematurely putting on social media my thinking before I've reached any sort of a conclusion, but very often you won't reach any sort of conclusion, and that brings me back to the next point, which is an appreciation of paradox and an awareness of paradox. And this idea that paradoxes need to be resolved, this doesn't seem to be obvious to me now at all. Yeah, I mean, I've not actually thought about any specific paradoxes, but that's a topic for another time. I'm actually, there are things that I've not put on this list that are coming to me now. But there are a few others on here. So I've already mentioned loss of judgment. There's a sense of a return to nature. Like, I don't get out much, but I'm doing that slightly more than I was, although it's cold and wintry and wet. Not a fan of that, but probably next summer I'll probably, you know, actually get out more. There's a loss of self-imposed limitations. So if I'd done this before, I would have had all these fears and anxieties. Oh, what are people going to think? Da, 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 da. It's just not as present. And a big one is you become conscious of consciousness. That to me is the big leap here, is you become aware of the various layers, levels and fragments of your mind. And part of this work, this spiritual work, is to integrate. That's a word that's been thrown around quite a lot now. You've got Carl Jung's individuation process. You've got Maslow's self-actualization. In my mind, they're all kind of talking about the same thing. It's integrating your consciousness. It's integrating all aspects of yourself. The self of you, the part of you that loves, the part of you that absolutely despises things, the part of you that has fears, the part of you that has concerns, the part of you that is obsessed with things. It's all about integrating all of this and recognizing that identifying with any particular fragment of your mind is always to the detriment of the whole of your mind. Whereas if you can harness the whole, and I believe that's possible through recognition of presence and intuition, then you become this integrated being that just flows with things and doesn't get caught up in things as much. I stress. There will still be times when I'll get caught up in things. I mean, I'm still really caught up in things. This is a very new process for me. But I mean, I think I've basically covered it. Like, I thought this would be a 10-minute video. It's turning out to be nearly 40 minutes. But yeah, this is essentially the process I've been going through now for the past year. There's probably a million things I've missed from this, so expect a part 2 of all the spiritual awakening things that have happened to me that I've missed. One big one that I have not included is a desire to get in touch with people again and spend more time with people. That's a massive one for me. I've always been quite I wouldn't say I'm actually that introverted. I've just never really sort of had that instinctive seeking out time with other people thing like most other people seem to. But I really enjoy now the time I spend with people, and I really am looking to get in touch with people, old friends and family that I haven't seen for quite some time, and that's a big shift for me, and it's something I'm getting used to. And of course, with this journey, as a sort of a concluding remark, it's very intense. There'll be intense peaks of awareness, and then I'll be back into my old self again and be like, oh, where's it gone? And then it'll come back again. So suddenly I'll want to spend time with people, and then then I suddenly won't, and then I'll feel really apathetic, and then I'll get back into something that I used to be interested in, and then I'll drift away from that. And there are peaks and troughs, and conscious growth is not linear. It's not like this. It's like, but the trajectory for me at least over the last year especially, but I can trace this process back at least 3 years. The trajectory is on the up and at an accelerating rate, but there's no need, there's nothing that says that that's always going to be the case. I might sort of have a real slump there, and then it might come back again, but I'm less attached to these things, and this too shall pass. This state I'm in now shall pass. All forms are bound to the temporal realm or something, like, you know, all forms have a finite lifetime, and that includes the state of mind that I'm in now. It includes the state of my body and the state of my mind and the state of this room and the state of everything. But that background awareness is persistent and unbreakable and is written into this universe. It is this universe. It's what's driving everything, and that process that's been unfolding since the beginning of this universe, and that's not going to stop. And on that rather extreme note, I will finally end this video. Thank you for watching, and I hope to see you again for some more of these sometime soon. Thank you.